George. Thank you so much, George. Now everybody's listening. Sustainable growth is not about when, it's about how and with whom we are off the track, but kids are scrutinizing us. It was a very good statement from George. The power of the youth, that's what he meant. A sustainable world means not leave developing countries behind, and the inequity of the numbers are really shocking. The next topic is also very interesting: politics, environment and COVID. Whose loss? A very interesting topic to discuss, and our guest is Gina McCarthy, former EPA administrator, president and CEO of the NRDC. Gina, welcome, and I'll be back to you in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody. It's terrific to join you today. I wish I was there in person, but I'm confined to my condominium in Boston. But it's great to connect with all of you who share the same mission, and that's to protect the special places in our world, to protect the people in our world, and to all work together to tackle the climate crisis. So let me begin by saying that all my life, with the exception of the last year where I am president and CEO of the Natural Resources Defense Council in the US, which is a large environmental advocacy organization, I spent all my life in government. I worked for 6 governors in the United States, and I worked for President Obama. I worked for President Obama for 8 years. I ran the air and climate programs, and I did a tremendous amount of work as EPA administrator on the issue that we're gathering here to talk about, which is the status of the world and our planet, which is climate change. And I've always viewed environmental work that I've been doing as really all about people. It is essentially a public health mission. It's about every individual's right to clean air, to clean water, and to places where they can live and work and play that don't harm them, but provide them wonderful opportunities to live healthy lives and to protect the natural resources and biodiversity that we all try desperately to protect and enjoy. So after all, environmental protection boils down to public health protection, and climate change boils down to essentially the most significant public health challenge of our time. So look, I want to make it very clear that when I talk about climate change, I don't talk so much about the planet. I understand that we have to care for the planet, but essentially what I talk to people about is people. I know that the planet is at risk, but I also know that the planet can adjust to climate change. It's people that won't be able to adjust to climate change. So the important thing that I try to do in everything I do, from every day I stand up and I try to make people understand why climate change is relevant to their lives, and why if we focus on the benefits of solutions to climate, like clean energy, clean transportation, energy efficient housing, if we look at those issues, we can make people's lives better today, not just ensure that instability in our planet won't wipe out our species. And in fact, I figure that the planet finds human beings to be the most annoying species. So it's just going to adjust. We have to protect ourselves. And so it's very important that we all work together, because I am very hopeful that climate change is not unstoppable. It is not too late. We can slow it down and we can stop it. The thing we have to do is to stay hopeful together and to stand together. And we need to demand the change that's necessary. And we have to power that demand with innovative clean energy solutions, not just to fix the planet, but to make everybody's lives better today. We can grow jobs, we can stabilize our economy, we can have a future that we'll be proud to hand to our children if we just work together. Look, the 8 years of my life that I spent in Washington, D.C. with President Obama, I worked literally 24/7 on issues like reducing air pollution, cleaning up our drinking water in contaminated sites. And I led the Obama administration's domestic efforts on greenhouse gas emission reductions. I helped to set the stage for a Paris Agreement. And over the past 3 years, I have done nothing but watch the current administration in Washington roll back rule after rule that are fundamental protections for public health and desecrate all of the progress that we made through regulation and through policy, including pulling out of the Paris Agreement in order to stop the effort on climate change. And they continue to deny climate. But I remain hopeful. And if I can do it, you can do it. So I want to explain to you why, while we're living through so many crises today, that we are positioned now better than we ever have been before to tackle this climate crisis in a systemic way, because climate doesn't stand alone. We are facing huge challenges today. And if we want to build back better, we need solutions that address all of them. Yes, these challenges are all about COVID-19 first and foremost. And in the US, we have already lost 220,000 lives to COVID-19. And that's just a low estimate. We are also looking at a winter that's going to get colder and darker, where we have every reason to believe that that number could nearly double. We're dealing with systemic racism against Black Americans that once and for all has to be stopped. We're dealing with record unemployment and economic instability. And on top of that, we're dealing with the climate crisis, which is like a steroid that makes all of these things worse. So you may ask yourself, why do I think it's a good time? Well, let me explain it to you. First of all, I think with COVID-19, there is no silver lining. In other words, I'm not saying anything good about COVID-19, but it did teach the US public some fundamental lessons. Number one, it taught us that if we ignore the science, like we've been doing with climate change, we do so at our own peril. We have been denying COVID-19 in terms of its opportunity that it has to kill people and injure them long term. And instead, our leaders have made fun of masks, and they've not taken proper precautions to allow us to have a stable economy. Same with climate change. They've been denying that science as well. So we now know that we have to listen to the scientists, not politicians. We cannot tolerate that game playing any longer. We also know that all of us are at risk. And believe it or not, most of us are changing our behavior. So we can see change when it's necessary. We can change holistically to address climate change if we can stand together and face reality and science. We now know that over 70% of the people in the United States are ready, willing, and demanding that we address climate change. Those are numbers we have never seen before, and they're Republicans and they're Democrats. We are learning from the challenges of today. And we also know that not everybody is harmed equally. In the US, we see Black Americans, we see people of color, brown Americans, we see the poor. Those communities are seeing double the death rates of white communities. This is not fair. This is not just. We have to deal with the systemic racism that is making those communities, Black, brown, indigenous, and poor communities, more at risk of death from COVID-19. And it's because systemic racism has held them back. They don't have secure housing. They don't have access to good food. They don't have access to green spaces and exercise. And we need to face facts that the US has an inordinate responsibility to deal with our obligation, not just to our own poor communities and communities of color, but to all of the other developing world that has suffered from our pollution for far too long. So we know also that if we need leaders that actually value people over polluters, that actually pay attention to what we need. And what gives me hope is that we have solutions that actually can make these systemic changes happen. We don't just have to fix the climate. We have to fix COVID-19. We have to follow the science. We have to build an economy that's strong and brings everybody, lifts everybody up. And it's not just possible today, but it's likely. And that's why I'm hopeful, because even in the US, remember I mentioned all those rollbacks? It's not really as bad as we once thought. And so I am really hopeful. NRDC and other organizations have sued every time the current administration has rolled back fundamental health and climate protections. And we have won 92% of the cases. That's more than 80 cases that have been settled. We have won because this administration has not underpinned their rulemaking with necessary science and the law. So we can build those things back better. And the administration has failed miserably to revive the coal sector or to give increased advantage to other fossil fuels like natural gas. And because states and cities has taken up the mantle of change when the federal government has been asleep. We see 1 out of 3 people in the United States living in a city or a state that has committed to 100% clean energy by 2050. They want to meet the Paris Agreement, and we are still making progress. And clean energy in the US has taken off. It's less expensive. We know it's cleaner. We know it's going to reduce that air pollution that is imposing extreme risks to all those disadvantaged and vulnerable communities at a time of COVID-19. We have young people that are standing up and taking to the streets. We have Black Lives Matter that is insisting that solutions end systemic racism. And we also have an opportunity for women to stand up. We have an election coming up for a change in leadership, and many of us are thirsty for that to be done, because we know we have an opportunity for new leadership that cares about people, and women are leading the way. And like I always say, and yes, it's a little bit of a joke, but there's reality behind it. I always say there's 3 things I know about climate change. Number 1, climate change is real. Number 2, man-made emissions have caused it. And number 3, that's why women need to rule the world. And they're the ones that are getting out and voting. They're the ones that are going to bring new leadership to the table. So while we all know that the challenge is difficult, the opportunity is available for us to build back better. That is the next president's opportunity if this election gets rid of a climate denier and puts in a man who listens, a leader who cares about people, a leader with a plan to get us to the Paris Agreement faster and more broadly than ever before. So I am hopeful. I hope you are too. I wish I were there, but let me stop there and take a few questions if I can. Thanks so much for having me.
Gina, it's been an honor to have you with us, with all your energy. It's a privilege to be here talking to you. Can we say that when everybody is losing, it's the right time to rethink everything and to restart and truly make a change?
I think that all of the dramatic impacts we're seeing now are making a big difference, because people are learning from that and they realize that we can change our behavior. I'm sitting in my house. I haven't been on a plane for almost a year. Who would have thunk it? So I think the opportunity is that I don't want a future that just fixes the planet. I want a future that moves away from fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are causing public health challenges. They are causing pollution that is damaging health today. And if we look at the opportunities available to us, if we look at electric vehicles, if we look at energy efficient housing, if we look at solar and wind, if we look at combining all those advancements together and using the ingenuity and innovation that you gather right there, we can win this battle in a way that will not just protect our planet, but make life better for every human being. And then we will all demand that that change continue. We don't need to know all the way forward on climate change. We just need to know the next way forward and start running with what we have and relying on the private sector to innovate to get us where we need to go.
Gina, let's win this battle and put this hope among us and also on the youngest generations. But also, I have the question about the elections that are coming up. And if Biden does win this run for president in Washington, do you still believe that we can make a change in the climate decline that we are going through?
Well, let me put it this way. If the current administration gets 4 more years, I think many of us in the U.S., but let me just speak for myself personally, it is not going to be the opportunity of a lifetime for us. It's going to be the challenge of a lifetime. Because it will be damaging to our democracy, and it's going to be a challenge for us. And all we're going to end up doing is to fight for the future we want. But frankly, we all have to fight for the future we want, no matter who's president and what leader, because we need leadership. So we'll keep doing the same things. We'll fight against continued rollbacks. We'll try it as best we can to protect our democracy. And we'll remember that in our democracy, change happens from the bottom up, and we'll keep working with local communities, working with states, so that we can quickly change. If Vice President Biden wins the election, his plans are very clear. He understands the science. He understands that climate change is the biggest threat we have. He listened to environmental justice communities. He is demanding that we invest in a stimulus that will raise everybody up, address systemic racism, deal with the poor housing and the lack of access to good food and other challenges in poor communities that make them more vulnerable. And he will bring us the kind of Build Back Better future that our children are demanding of us. And they should demand it. We haven't delivered it. And so we have to do it now. We have no way around it.
Not only for the climate, but around the political agenda that's going on in the United States. Do you feel that you have your country split in two?
You know, I think under the current president, that's been a very careful strategy, is to divide us. But no, I don't think so. I think issues like COVID-19 and racism are raising challenges for us that are systemic, and that all of us understand that we need to address. I shouldn't say all of us, most of us. And I do know that even a vast majority of Republican millennials are demanding that the Republican Party change its stance on climate change and take action now. So we have more people than anyone could imagine that are going to the polls right now, and they're voting with their hearts, they're voting with their values, they're voting knowing that it's about maintaining our democracy. So I'm very hopeful, not just about the results of the election, but I'm hopeful that we are going to keep pushing for the kind of change we need.
I hope that too. Let's keep the hope on high. And Gina McCarthy, it was a privilege to be talking to you. I hope to see you soon in Portugal, although you haven't traveled for almost a year, and I'm sure you haven't missed it. But hope to see you soon in Portugal. Thank you so much, Gina. A big applause,
I'll
please.
be there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.